What's up with men using the women's section in shul? Can a man cut through the ladies section on Shabbos morning when coming to shul? Can a man cut through the ladies section to use the bathroom? Does it make a difference if the person is older or younger? Is it proper to daven in the women's section during the week when there's no ladies there anyway? And finally, if a man is in the ladies, this is all the same email, if a man is in the ladies section during the week, can he be counted to be part of the minyan in the men's section? See, there's 8 men in the men's section and 2 men are standing in the as a snushim. Is it a different room? Okay. Or do they need to go to the other side of the mechitza? Okay, to make it the same room. All right, so let's tackle this. Let's tackle this step by step. Can a man cut through the ladies section on Shabbos morning when coming into shul? So I don't know if that is a physical question or is that a halacha question. I'm going to start out with a premise. Here's the premise. The premise is that the other way would be a scandal, and every man would agree. If women were to start cutting through the men's section to get into the women's section while I'm davening, I would walk over to them and say, excuse me, women should not be walking through the men's section. There's a very interesting tshuva, it happens to be from Rav Moshe. Somebody sent in a shout out to Rav Moshe that, there's people, we discussed yesterday in shul, there's people, Baruch Hashem, we're a community that apparently we give tzedakah, and we should feel blessed that, and I'm shocked at times, so many collectors come to St. Louis to collect money.
They like us.
Huh? Yeah. Yeah, I guess they're welcomed warmly. They're welcomed warmly. People give. And I asked one, I'm like, why are you in St. Louis? Like, we're such a small community, like Chicago, New York, Lakewood, everything. Like, what is here? And they told me here they're welcomed warmly and everybody gives something. In other places, they could get bigger checks, but it's a little colder. People also say no. Apparently here people don't say no as much. They'll get something. Even if it's less, but they're welcome nicely. So there's a tshuva from Rav Moshe where somebody sent in that during davening there were 2 women that walked around while the men were davening collecting money. Sometimes you'll have men going around collecting, and these are women collectors. Now usually they have sense, they sit outside for the men to finish davening and to walk out and to ask them if they have tzedakah. These women were walking around, and the person wanted to know whether it's they should make a macha, whether they should protest. And Rav Moshe, interesting, he wrote that no. He said it's not a problem unless it's being done on a consistent basis. But if it happens, if there's 2 women that come once a year to your shul, it's these things where they're coming every once in a while, one walks around, it's not an appropriate thing, basically, he's pointing out, he didn't say it like this, but he said this, you don't have to make a big deal out of it, it is what it is, but if it becomes like women are always walking into the men's section, that's problematic. That's a problem. So, I want to start with a premise. The premise is, again, that for women to walk through the men's section, I think the men would agree that's not appropriate. Even men who walk through the women's section would agree it's not appropriate. I think they're just not thinking. Here's another premise, which is very important, and it touches on one of the questions. And this is something that it's a sensitivity that I think it's very important that we all pick up on. And that's like this. We all know of people that, let me back off. Forget we all know of people. We've shared a story about Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel. He had a chabura in the mirror of guys who were struggling in their learning, and he set aside a chabura for them, a group for them to learn. But a lot of these guys came late, if they came at all. But Rav Nosson Tzvi was insistent that people didn't take their seats. Just in case they would come, if somebody was in their seat, they're not going to walk in. They're like, okay, my seat's taken, I'm going back to bed. Or I'm going back to the bar, or whatever he's doing. Okay? So he was insistent that those seats are available. I think that it's not nice for men to go and daven in the ladies section. I think it's not nice. I don't think people are intentionally not being nice. But if women don't, in our shul specifically, women don't come to daven during the week to minyan. For 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is, because women don't come to daven during the week. Reason number two is that even if a woman ever thought about coming to daven during the week, she wouldn't, because she knows there's going to be two men in the women's section that came late or whatever and are sitting on the side, and anywhere there's nowhere for them to daven. So I think that if a person would be thoughtful, for a man to be thoughtful, we have plenty of seats in the men's section. So if somebody were to ask me, I would recommend that even during the week when there's no women who are coming to minyan, stay in the men's section, because you could have it that a woman might feel a cheshik, a drive to come, they know minchas in the afternoon, they want to hear Amen Yehi Shmei Rabbah, or they want to start out their day answering an Amen, even if it's for 5 minutes. And if a woman would know that there's a space set aside for them to come, they might come. So why not? Why not just let it be available so people aren't turned away? So is it proper to daven? One of the points was, is it proper to daven the women's house during the week when no ladies are there? I would say it's not a problem, but a person who wants to be thoughtful of potential outcomes should probably not daven in the women's section. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there was a time when, maybe a 6-month period of time, where I started my day davening early. If I had a tahar or whatever, I would come early. And there were a couple of men that as soon as they saw me, they went over to the other side. It was absolutely no problem at all.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Very respectful.
I'm glad to hear that our shul's like that.
It was very, no, it really was. It was very, very respectful.
I'm glad, Baruch Hashem. Okay. So if somebody's like that, so then it would be proper. It would be proper. You can hear that perhaps, and I don't think a person needs to go this far, there have been situations where it's come up, whether in other shuls or once or twice in our shul, where it's been mentioned to me, or I've seen somebody walk in, and sometimes men don't notice because they're like in the middle of davening, so they're not noticing a woman walking in from the back. I would say, Baruch Hashem, in our shul, people have enough sense that if they see the woman, they'll leave. My concern mentioning that was, what about a woman who walks in and is too timid to even be like, oh, okay, there's a man there, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
It's not even, which they shouldn't do. They shouldn't leave. I mean, it's their space. You don't need to walk out of your own house just because somebody else is there. I mean, unless it's a stranger. But yeah, I would recommend leaving and calling the cops. But yeah, go ahead, Cliff.
What about during Kol HaMoed?
So Cliff's bringing up there's exceptions. There's exceptions. We're going to get to the exceptions, and that is Chol HaMoed. So we have 2 minyanim, so to speak, because there's different customs whether to wear talis and tefillin on Chol HaMoed or whether to just wear a talis on Chol HaMoed without the tefillin. So there, because of Leisis to do, you shouldn't make groups, so we daven on different sides. So there, hopefully women know that the women's section is not the women's section of Chol HaMoed. It's set aside for the men's minyan. That's what it's set aside. But that would be an exception to that. Okay, so with that premise, two premises, and that is premise number 1 is, I think we would not be okay with women cutting through the men's section, and a premise that sensitivity would dictate that a man should be thoughtful enough to not make it that women feel they don't have their space in shul, and that's the proper approach. With that backdrop, let's tackle these questions. Can a man cut the ladies' section Shabbos morning while coming into shul? So, I would say that it's the same answer to whether or not a man in shul could cut through to use the bathroom. Now, I'm dealing specifically with the structure of our shul and our as nashim. There's in other shuls it will be a completely separate thing. You're not allowed to use a shul as a shortcut. Okay, so if somebody's using it as nashim as a shortcut, like a different room, that's forbidden. You can't use it as nashim as like a shul. You can use it as a shortcut. But over here, it's not a shortcut. It's just like the path straight through. It happens to be that there's a woman's section there on Shabbos morning. So there's two primary things in general that need to be taken into account. Number 1 is a man's physical abilities. We also have restrooms downstairs? That's A. And B, I just had it this Shabbos. Downstairs, I saw a few talisim already outside the bathroom. Right? That's how you could sense how many, if the bathrooms people are there. There's talisim wrapped up outside. So I walked outside. Right? Not a big deal. You just walk around the building and you could access the bathrooms upstairs by walking outside. You need to cut through the women's section. Okay? So a person's physical abilities, can a person walk around? Can a person walk downstairs? If not, then it's everyone's responsibility to help that person. Okay? Whether that person is showing up to shul and they have a hard time using steps, or they have a hard time walking, and they're a man, and the way our shul is structured is the women's section is also by the side door that has no steps. So then it would be the women's responsibilities to not mind the man cutting through to get to the men's section. And the same thing would hold true if that such a person has to use the bathroom. Another exception would be for something that's kavod habrios. Kavod habrios is if there is an urgent need to use the restroom, and one bathroom is much closer and one bathroom is further. Putting those two things aside, it's very inappropriate for men to be walking through a woman's section while they're davening. It's a woman's space. Men don't belong there. I know what people will say, that's not true. A shul's a place for men. That's a place where men need a minyan, women don't need a minyan, they're just guests. And the answer is, you're dead wrong. It's not true. Because there's a reason why there's an Ezras Nashim. That's why it's Ezras Nashim. It's the women's section. Women are supposed to be in shul even though they don't have the chiyuv to daven with a minyan, but that is their place. It's not, the entire space does not belong to men. It's an Ezras Nashim. It's not an Ezras Anoshim. In the Beis HaMikdash as well, there was an Ezras Nashim. Right when women weren't there were avodas done there were certain things. But if women are there in the Ezras Nashim, men, unless there's a physical need to cut through, or there's kavod habrios involved, maybe here and there you can think of some more exceptions, but otherwise it's not a shaila. The third part is, does it make a difference if they're older or younger? The answer is no. It just depends on physical abilities. That's it. I don't know why it should matter if somebody's 90, 60,
young
10.
boys cut through.
Huh?
A lot of young boys cut through constantly.
Okay, so the young boys, the young boys is, I'm not even thinking about them, because the same way I'm not discussing young girls cutting through the men's section. I think that's a different conversation. That's kids just being around shul. There's no obligation on them to stay out of a specific section. If they're younger, some paiskim will say under age 9 is not a problem for various sections. But yeah, I'm discussing people who are davening and in shul and older, younger. I was just discussing physical. Understand that to mean physical ability. So I think we covered those first 4 questions. And the last part of the question is, if a man's in the ladies section during the week, is he counted as part of the minyan? So I want to show you something. I want to show you something incredible. Blew me away. This is from Reb David Feinstein. David Feinstein says like this. This is written in the Yad Daidi. The questions, answers with David Feinstein. This specific in Arachaim. This is on page, on my fancy phone here, 32. Leave. Listen to this. There's 8 mispalalim in shul. 8 guys in the shul. Mispalal echad b'knisa. There's a 9th guy in the lobby. V'od mispalal, a 10th guy, hayoshev b'chaniya b'soich rechev. He's sitting in the parking lot in his car. A 10th man sitting in his car. Ha'im zeh she'omer b'knisa yochol letzarif es kulam leminyan kasher hu roya heines ha'mispalim b'soich beis ha'knesses. Here's the shayla. The 9th guy's in the lobby. He could see into the 8th, and he could see the guy in the car. Does number 9 connect tic-tac-toe? Says Reb David Feinstein, Lechora Kain. Avoladayin Sorach Ian says you can look into this, look at them more, but it seems that's okay. Why? I was like, what? What? You serious? All right. So here's the deal. There is Allah in Shulchan Aruch that says that if some, it's explicit in a lot of the places. If somebody's as a snushin, they cannot be conjoined. They do not join together for a minyan. And when most people read that halacha, they say, okay, so it's not a conversation starter. Except that Reb David Feinstein and others, they understand it to be discussing as a snushin, that's a separate room. There's the way that snushins are, either it's like a balcony up with closed curtains and windows. But the way that our shul is structured, where first of all the mechitza is 6 feet high, so it doesn't. The ceilings are probably 25. I don't know, whatever, much higher. We have very high ceilings, so it's not a wall that completely divides the room. It's a mechitza that's needed halachically to allow men and women to daven in different sections without seeing each other. But our as a snashim is not a completely separate cheder. It's not a completely separate room. So the Paiskim pretty much have a consensus that in our shul, if a man, let's say, is on the other side of the mechitza, 2 men on the other side of the mechitza, and 8 on the men's side, that it wouldn't be an issue. Specifically with David Feinstein's writing over here. Here you can see each other, and I'm 6'2", so I could barely see over. When my brother Shmuley, who's Kanai 6'6", when he joined his shul, so he has a lower mechitza than we do. Don't tell anybody in Lakewood. Yikes! So he was a Lakewood guy. He learned in Lakewood, and he was taking over like a modern Orthodox shul that had a different level mechitza. And they asked him if he's going to be. If one of the things they asked him apparently when they interviewed him is, does he plan on changing the mechitza? I think they didn't want him. It's make big changes. So he's like, I'm not. He's like, as long as the rabbi can't see over it, it's good. It's good. It's like, but 7 feet tall. That was his line. But I think he either way, whatever. He's got a kosher mechitza, Baruch Hashem. But yeah. So bottom line, if a man is in ladies' section during the week, is he counted as part of the minyan? Yes. And I think this psak of David Feinstein was fascinating. So Allah is kama v'kama. How much